You traveled to Peru or Costa Rica or some retreat center in California that charges $3,000 for a weekend. You sat in a circle with strangers, the shaman or the white guy who spent 3 months in the Amazon and now calls himself a shaman, handed you a cup of brown liquid that smelled like death itself. You drank it because you were searching for healing, for answers, for the mystical experience everyone on Instagram promised you would find. They told you ayahuasca would open your third eye, that it would show you God, that it would heal your trauma, reveal your purpose, connect you to ancient wisdom. They told you it was sacred, safe, that indigenous people have used it for thousands of years. What they didn't tell you is what's actually in that cup, what those plant spirits really are, and what happens to your energy field when you invite them in. I'm going to tell you something that will get me attacked by the psychedelic community, the neo-shamanic movement, and everyone who's built their identity around plant medicine. Ayahuasca is not what they told you it is. The visions you see are not higher consciousness. The entities you meet are not spirit guides, and the healing you experience is not what you think it is. In the next 60 minutes, I'm going to expose what really happens when you drink ayahuasca, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of truth that's been suppressed by an industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm going to show you what DMT actually does to your brain and energy field, why shamanic traditions had strict protocols that modern ceremonies ignore, what those entities really are and why they're not benevolent, the dark side of plant medicine that nobody talks about, and why the rapid commercialization of ayahuasca is not accidental. This is not anti-psychedelic propaganda. This is not religious fundamentalism. This is information that traditional shamans knew, that has been deliberately obscured, and that people discovering too late, after their ceremony, after their life unravels, after they can't close the doors they opened. You ready? Because we're about to shatter the biggest lie in modern spirituality. Let's begin. Let's start with the facts, the chemistry, the mechanism. Ayahuasca is a brew made from 2 primary plants, Banisteriopsis carpi, the ayahuasca vine, Psychotria viridis, chacruna leaves, which contain DMT. The vine contains MAO inhibitors, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which prevent your stomach from breaking down DMT. The leaves contain DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is the psychoactive compound. Normally, if you consume DMT orally, your stomach would destroy it before it reached your brain. But the MAO inhibitors allow the DMT to pass through your digestive system, into your bloodstream, across the blood-brain barrier, and into your brain. This is botanical hacking. The combination of these 2 plants creates an experience that neither plant could create alone. Now, DMT is not exclusive to ayahuasca. It's found in thousands of plant species. It's also produced naturally in your own pineal gland in trace amounts, particularly during birth, near-death experiences, and possibly during dreaming. But here's the critical distinction. The DMT your body produces is controlled, regulated, released in precise amounts for specific purposes. Drinking ayahuasca floods your system with DMT at concentrations your brain never evolved to handle. It's like the difference between the gentle light of dawn and staring directly into the sun. Both are light, but one is natural and the other is overwhelming. Let's talk about how indigenous Amazonian tribes actually used ayahuasca, because it's nothing like the retreat centers selling it to Westerners. In traditional practice, 1. Shamanic training required years. You didn't just show up and drink. Shamans trained for decades, often starting in childhood. They underwent extreme dietas, dietary restrictions, long periods of isolation, and apprenticeship under experienced practitioners. They learn to navigate the spirit world, to protect themselves, to distinguish between different types of entities, to close the portals they opened. 2. Ceremonies were rare and specific. Ayahuasca wasn't recreational. It wasn't for self-discovery. It was used for specific purposes: healing serious illness, divination for the tribe, communication with specific spirits for specific reasons. The average person in these tribes would never drink ayahuasca. Only the shaman, and occasionally someone under their care for serious healing. 3. Extensive preparation was mandatory. Before a ceremony, participants would undergo weeks of dietary restrictions. No salt, sugar, oil, sex, alcohol. They would engage in plant baths, prayers, and energetic cleansing. Why? Because you needed to be energetically clean before opening yourself to the spirit realm. Going in dirty was considered extremely dangerous. 4. Protection protocols were strict. The shaman would create a protected space through Icaros, sacred songs, tobacco smoke, and invocation of specific protective spirits. The ceremony happened in a controlled environment with the shaman maintaining vigilance over everyone's spiritual safety. 5. Integration was lengthy. After the ceremony, participants would continue dietary restrictions and would spend weeks integrating the experience under shamanic guidance. Now compare that to modern ayahuasca retreats. You show up after eating McDonald's on the plane. You drink with 20 strangers. The facilitator might have taken a 6-month course. You go home 2 days later and return to normal life. No preparation, minimal protection, zero integration support. This is like performing surgery in a parking lot and wondering why people get infections. During an ayahuasca ceremony, most people report encountering entities, beings, presences. They're described as geometric patterns that feel intelligent, serpents or jaguars, classic Amazonian archetypes. Alien-like beings with large eyes, deceased loved ones. Mother Ayahuasca herself, the standard interpretation in psychedelic culture. These are spirit guides, helpful entities, aspects of your higher self, or inhabitants of higher dimensions. But here's what traditional shamans actually understood. The spirit realm is not all light and love. It's populated by entities with varying levels of consciousness, intention, and power. In Amazonian cosmology, there are helping spirits, benevolent entities that assist with healing, but they don't show up unless properly invoked by someone who knows how to call them. Neutral spirits, curious entities who observe but don't interfere. Like wildlife, they're there, they're real, but they're not concerned with you. Malicious spirits, entities that feed on human energy, confusion, and suffering. They masquerade as helpful but have parasitic intentions. Trickster spirits, beings that deceive, confuse, and lead people astray for their own entertainment or purpose. Traditional shamans spent years learning to discern between these categories. They developed relationships with specific helping spirits and learned to banish or avoid the others. But here's the problem. When you drink ayahuasca without proper training or protection, you're broadcasting your presence to all of these entities. You're essentially opening a door to the spirit realm and shouting, "I'm here and I'm vulnerable." And whatever shows up, helpful, neutral, or malicious, you have no ability to discern which is which. Here's the question nobody asks. How do you know the entity you encountered is what it claims to be? If a being appears to you as Mother Ayahuasca and tells you profound truths, How do you verify its authenticity? If an entity shows you visions of your past lives, reveals your life purpose, or gives you instructions for your future, how do you know it's not deceiving you? The honest answer, you can't know. Not without training, not without discernment, not without the ability to test spirits, which is a skill traditional shamans developed over decades. In Christian mysticism, there's a practice called testing the spirits. When a spiritual entity appears, you test it. You ask specific questions. You observe its behavior. You check its teachings against divine truth. Why? Because both the Bible and centuries of Christian mystical experience recognized not every spirit is benevolent. Some are deceptive. Some masquerade as angels of light. The same understanding exists in virtually every legitimate spiritual tradition. Buddhism warns about Mara, the deceiver. Hinduism describes asuras, entities that oppose spiritual development. Islamic tradition recognizes jinn, beings that can be helpful or harmful. Indigenous traditions across the world have protocols for spiritual discernment. But modern ayahuasca culture operates on a naive assumption. If it comes from the plant, it must be good. If you encounter it in ceremony, it must be a guide. This is spiritually dangerous. Because malicious entities are sophisticated, they know what you want to hear. They can appear beautiful, loving, and wise. They can give you genuine insights mixed with subtle poisons. They can tell you 90% truth and 10% deception, and that 10% will derail your life. And you won't realize it until years later, when you look back and wonder why that profound guidance led you into darkness. Let's talk about the neuroscience. What's physically happening when DMT floods your brain? DMT primarily acts on serotonin receptors, particularly the 5-HT2A receptor. This receptor is involved in perception and cognition, mood regulation, imagination and creativity, sense of self and ego boundaries. When DMT binds to these receptors, it creates a cascade of effects. 1. Default mode network, DMN shutdown. The DMN is the brain network responsible for self-referential thinking, I thoughts, mind-wandering, autobiographical memory, sense of separate self. DMT essentially shuts this down. The sense of you as a separate individual dissolves. This is what people call ego death. Sounds liberating, right? But here's what they don't tell you. Your ego, your sense of self, is not your enemy. It's your psychological immune system. It's what maintains boundaries, what protects your psyche from intrusion. When you dissolve those boundaries intentionally, you become permeable, not just to cosmic consciousness, but to anything operating in non-physical realms. 2. Visual cortex hyperactivation. DMT creates extraordinary visual hallucinations by overwhelming your visual processing centers with activity that's not coming from your eyes. You're not seeing with your physical eyes. You're experiencing direct brain activity that manifests as vision. The question is this brain activity purely internal? Or is it receiving information from an external source? Is it hallucination? Or is it perception of another dimension? Modern neuroscience says hallucination. Traditional shamans say perception. The truth might be both. 3. Temporal lobe stimulation. The temporal lobes are associated with mystical experiences, sense of presence, feeling of profound meaning, communication with entities. People with temporal lobe epilepsy often report mystical experiences, sensing presences, hearing voices. Not because they're holy, but because that's what temporal lobe activity creates. Bhati, MT, massively stimulates these regions. The experience feels profound, meaningful, divine, because that's what temporal lobe activation feels like. But feeling divine and being divine are not the same thing. 4. Pineal gland activation. This is speculative, but some researchers believe DMT affects the pineal gland, the third eye. In esoteric traditions, the pineal gland is your biological antenna to higher dimensions. When activated, it allows perception beyond the five senses. If this is true, then DMT is forcefully activating an organ that's meant to open gradually, naturally, through spiritual development. It's like using a crowbar to open a door that should be unlocked with a key. Yes, you'll get through, but you might damage the door, and you have no control over what comes through once it's open. From an energetic perspective, here's what ayahuasca does. Your aura, your energy field, exists in layers. The outermost layers connect you to the spiritual realm. The innermost layers are closest to your physical body. These layers are meant to be semi-permeable. They allow energy exchange. You receive intuitive information. You send out intentions. But they also provide protection. When you take a psychedelic, especially a powerful one like ayahuasca, your aura explodes outward. Clairvoyants who can see energy fields describe it like this. The aura expands dramatically, the boundaries dissolve, holes appear, and the person becomes energetically exposed. This is why people report feeling one with everything during a ceremony. Your energetic boundaries have literally dissolved. You're no longer separate. You're merged with the surrounding energy field. This can feel blissful, cosmic, like you've touched the face of God. But here's the problem. You've also lost your protection. Anything in the energetic environment can now interact with you. Entities that normally couldn't get close can now attach. Energies you'd normally be shielded from can now penetrate your field. And when the ceremony ends, when the DMT wears off, your aura contracts back, but it doesn't always return to its original state. Sometimes holes remain. Sometimes attachments stay. Sometimes something that entered during the ceremony doesn't leave when the drug wears off. This is what energy healers report consistently. People come to them months or years after ayahuasca ceremonies, struggling with unexplained anxiety, intrusive thoughts, feelings of being watched, or sensations that something is off. The healer looks at their energy field and finds attachments, energetic debris, tears in the aura that never healed. The person genuinely doesn't understand why they've been struggling. They had a beautiful ceremony. They met their guides. They experienced profound healing. But something came back with them, and it's been feeding ever since. Let's address the elephant in the room: possession. Not the Hollywood version, not spinning heads and demonic voices. Subtle possession, energetic hijacking, the gradual replacement of your thoughts with something else's thoughts. Shamans across traditions understand this. Ayahuasca ceremonies in traditional contexts include extensive protection protocols specifically because they know the spirit realm contains entities that will take advantage of an opened, unprotected consciousness. The tobacco smoke, the Icaros, the invocation of protective spirits, the shaman's constant vigilance, all of this creates a protected container. But most modern ceremonies lack this. The facilitator might blow some mapacho smoke and sing a few songs they learned on YouTube, but they don't have the decades of training to recognize when an entity has entered, distinguish helpful from harmful, remove unwanted attachments, close the portals properly so people finish the ceremony with something attached. They return to normal life and they notice changes. thoughts that don't feel like theirs, impulses that don't align with their values, emotional volatility that seems foreign, a sense of being watched or influenced, cravings for more ayahuasca. The attached entity wants to go back. They attribute it to integration challenges or the medicine still working. They don't recognize it as attachment because nobody warned them it was possible. And the entity remains, influencing, feeding, slowly taking more control. Here's something the psychedelic community desperately needs to hear. Ayahuasca does not heal trauma. It exposes trauma. And exposure without proper integration can re-traumatize, or worse, fracture the psyche in ways that require years to repair. Traditional shamanic healing was a process. Multiple ceremonies over months or years, extensive preparation, deep integration, support from community and shaman. Modern ayahuasca tourism is trauma bombardment. You're shown your deepest wounds in 4D Technicolor with no preparation and minimal integration support. Your psyche has defense mechanisms for a reason. Repression, dissociation, compartmentalization. These aren't always pathological. Sometimes they're what kept you functional after unbearable experiences. Ayahuasca rips those defenses away. It forces you to confront everything you've been protecting yourself from. For some people, this is healing. They're ready. They have the support systems. They have the resilience. For others, it's devastating. They're not ready. Their psyche fractures. They develop what's being called post-ayahuasca psychosis, a condition that's becoming more common as ceremonies proliferate. Symptoms include inability to distinguish between dimensions, persistent hallucinations, paranoia and delusions, dissociation from reality, suicidal ideation. The psychedelic community calls this difficult integration. But sometimes it's not integration, it's damage, and there's no informed consent. People aren't told this is a risk. They're told ayahuasca is safe, natural medicine. It's not medicine if it breaks you. Let's talk about what happens to people who become ayahuasca evangelists. They have 1 or 2 powerful ceremonies. They experience profound visions, cosmic insights, emotional catharsis. They feel healed, awakened, transformed. And they become convinced that ayahuasca is the answer, the shortcut to enlightenment, the cure for everything. They start attending more ceremonies, monthly, then weekly. They train to become facilitators themselves. They build their entire identity around plant medicine. And from the outside, they seem spiritual, peaceful, conscious. But look closer. Are they doing the actual work, or just having more ceremonies? Are they integrating insights into daily life, or just accumulating experiences? Are they becoming more grounded, or more spacey and dissociated? Are their relationships improving, or falling apart? Are they more present, or constantly seeking the next ceremony? This is spiritual bypassing, using spiritual experiences to avoid dealing with psychological wounds, practical responsibilities, and the hard work of actual growth. Ayahuasca becomes the bypass. Instead of going to therapy, they drink medicine. Instead of facing relationship problems, they seek cosmic insights. Instead of dealing with childhood wounds, they meet entities. And they feel like they're evolving, but they're actually stagnating. Real spiritual development is measured not by the intensity of your experiences, but by the quality of your daily life. Are you more loving, more patient, more present, more of service? Or are you just more addicted to altered states? Let's talk about the elephant in the jungle. Ayahuasca is now a multi-$100 million global industry. There are over 100 ayahuasca retreat centers in Peru alone. Costa Rica has dozens. Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, all cashing in. Prices range from $1,000 to $5,000 plus for a weekend retreat. Some luxury centers charge $10,000 for a week. And business is booming. Westerners, primarily Americans and Europeans, are traveling in droves, seeking healing, enlightenment, and Instagram content. The irony: indigenous people who've used ayahuasca for generations are often priced out of ceremonies that now cater to wealthy tourists. But here's the darker side. 1. Unregulated facilitators. There's no standardization, no licensing, no oversight. Someone can attend a few ceremonies, decide they're called to facilitate, take a brief training or not, and start serving ayahuasca to paying customers. They don't have shamanic training. They don't understand energetic protection. They can't handle psychological crises. They have no liability insurance. But they have a website, an Instagram following, and people willing to pay. 2. Adulterated brews. Traditional ayahuasca is made from specific plants prepared in specific ways. But as demand explodes, corners are cut. Some centers add datura or toe, powerful deliriants that create more intense visions, but can cause permanent psychosis or death. Others add synthetic compounds to make the brew more potent and reduce preparation time. And participants have no way to know what they're actually drinking. 3. Sexual exploitation. This is the ugliest part. Multiple documented cases of facilitators, particularly male shamans or Western facilitators, sexually abusing participants during ceremonies. You're in an altered state, defenseless, vulnerable, and someone in a position of power and trust violates you. When you try to report it, you're told, that was part of your healing. You manifested that experience. The medicine was showing you something. The victim gets gaslight. The perpetrator continues operating. This isn't rare, this is a pattern. Ayahuasca occupies a legal grey area in most countries. DMT is Schedule I in the United States, illegal to possess, sell, or use. But ayahuasca contains DMT in plant form, which creates legal ambiguity. Some religious groups, like the Unión de Vegetal and Santo Daime, have won legal exemptions to use ayahuasca as sacrament. But this doesn't extend to retreat centers operating as businesses. Most US-based ayahuasca ceremonies exist in legal limbo. Not explicitly legal, but not actively prosecuted unless something goes wrong. This creates several problems. 1. No quality control because it's not legal. It can't be regulated. There's no way to verify what's in the brew, who's serving it, or whether safety protocols exist. 2. No accountability. If something goes wrong, psychological break, sexual assault, medical emergency, participants have little legal recourse. They were participating in an illegal activity. 3. Incentive for secrecy centers operate under secrecy to avoid legal trouble. This means no transparent vetting of facilitators, no published safety records, no peer review or oversight. Incidents covered up to protect the operation. It's a perfect environment for exploitation. Let's address something uncomfortable. The ayahuasca boom is cultural extraction disguised as spiritual seeking. Indigenous Amazonian communities developed these practices over thousands of years. The knowledge of which plants, how to prepare them, how to create safe ceremonies, this is sacred ancestral knowledge. And now Western entrepreneurs and neo-shamans are taking that knowledge, commercializing it, removing the cultural context, profiting from it, and often giving nothing back to indigenous communities. Meanwhile, indigenous people face. Their lands destroyed by deforestation, their traditional medicines disappearing, their young people leaving for cities, their culture eroding, and wealthy Westerners fly in, take their medicine, have their experience and fly out, usually without ever understanding or supporting the people who preserved this knowledge. There are exceptions. Some centers genuinely partner with indigenous communities. Some ensure profits support conservation and cultural preservation. Some maintain traditional protocols. But many don't. They appropriate the aesthetics, the jungle setting, the Icaro songs, the ceremonial elements, while stripping away the depth, the context, and the community that makes it meaningful. And participants feel like they're engaging in something authentic when they're actually consuming a commercialized simulation. It's spiritual tourism, cultural extraction, colonialism with crystals. Here's a pattern that emerges with disturbing frequency. Someone has a powerful ayahuasca experience. They feel called to share it. They position themselves as a facilitator, guide, or medicine keeper. They start leading ceremonies. They gather followers. Their community grows. And then the power dynamics shift. They begin to believe they're special, chosen, that they have unique access to spiritual truth. Their followers reinforce this. They're grateful for the experiences. They project their healing onto the facilitator. They elevate them to guru status. The facilitator starts making rules, dietary restrictions for participants, sexual guidelines, sometimes exploiting them, financial commitments, emotional dependency, isolation from outside perspectives. This is textbook cult formation, and it's happening in the ayahuasca world repeatedly, because ayahuasca creates vulnerability. People in ceremony are open, trusting, susceptible to suggestion, and the manipulative facilitator can use that openness to establish control. Warning signs. The facilitator claims exclusive access to truth. Questioning them is framed as ego resistance. Financial demands increase over time. You're discouraged from talking to people outside the community. Sexual boundaries become blurred. You're told you need more ceremonies to complete your healing. If you see these patterns, you're not in a healing community, you're in a cult. So what are the visions? Where do they come from? The honest answer: we don't know with certainty, but we have theories. Theory 1, pure neurochemistry. The materialist view, DMT stimulates brain regions in ways that create complex hallucinations. The entities, the visions, the insights, all internally generated by neural activity. This explains consistency. Similar receptors equals similar experiences, but doesn't explain why people report verifiable information they couldn't have known. Theory 2, accessing the collective unconscious. The Jungian view. DMT allows access to archetypes and information stored in the collective unconscious, humanity's shared psychological substrate. The entities are archetypal forms. The visions are symbolic representations, real in a psychological sense, but not as independent beings. Theory 3, interdimensional perception. The traditional shamanic view. DMT shifts your perception to frequencies/dimensions beyond the physical. The entities are real, independent beings inhabiting these realms. You're not hallucinating. You're perceiving what's always there but normally invisible to human senses. Theory 4, mixed model. Perhaps it's all of the above. Neural activity creates the interface. The collective unconscious provides the symbolic language, and actual entities use that open channel to interact. Your brain is the radio. Consciousness is the signal. Entities are other broadcasters. Here's what I believe based on traditional knowledge and modern testimony. The visions are partially internally generated, your brain creating meaning from neurochemical chaos, and partially externally influenced actual entities interacting with your opened consciousness. Some of what you see is you, some of what you see is not you, and without discernment, you can't tell which is which. So if ayahuasca is problematic, how does one achieve spiritual growth? How does one heal? How does one access expanded consciousness? The answer is ancient and unsexy. Practice. Meditation. Gradual expansion of consciousness. Controlled. Safe. No entities invited. You develop your own connection to source without intermediaries. Breath work. Holotropic breath work. Wim Hof method. Pranayama. These can create altered states naturally, without substances. You maintain control while expanding awareness. Plant medicines used correctly. If you're genuinely called to work with plant medicines, do it right. With a legitimate trained shaman, decades of training, not months. In the traditional context, long preparation, proper protection, extensive integration. For specific healing purposes, not recreational seeking, with full understanding of risks. Therapy and shadow work, actual psychological healing, not bypassing trauma with cosmic experiences, but facing it, processing it, integrating it. Spiritual practices from your own tradition, instead of cultural appropriation. Explore the mystical traditions within your own culture. Christian mysticism, Jewish Kabbalah, Sufi practice, Western Hermetic traditions. These have technologies for consciousness expansion developed over centuries. Nature immersion. Spend extended time in wilderness, fast, be silent, pray. You'll access profound states naturally without any substances. The common thread. These methods require time, discipline, and patience. They don't offer the shortcut, the immediate blast of cosmic consciousness. I'm not telling you never to drink ayahuasca. I'm not saying everyone who does it is damaged. I'm not claiming traditional use is the same as commercialized ceremonies. I'm saying, know what you're actually doing. You're not taking medicine. You're opening a door to the spirit realm. You're not just expanding consciousness. You're making yourself vulnerable to non-physical entities. You're not guaranteed healing. You might get healing. You might get trauma. You might get attachment. And the modern ayahuasca industry is not prepared to handle the consequences. If you choose to proceed, do so with eyes open. 1. Vet your facilitator thoroughly. How long have they trained? Years, not months. Who trained them? Lineage matters. What's their understanding of spiritual protection? How do they handle psychological crises? What's their integration support? 2. Prepare properly. Months of dietary restriction. Meditation practice established. Psychological stability confirmed. Support system in place. Clear intention, not recreational seeking. 3. Protect yourself. Prayer before ceremony. Invoke your own protective forces. Maintain some degree of awareness even in the experience. Test entities you encounter. Don't blindly trust. 4. Integrate seriously. Work with a therapist familiar with psychedelics. Journal extensively. Give yourself months to integrate. Hostility. Don't immediately do another ceremony. 5. Have an exit plan if you experience persistent intrusive thoughts, sense of being watched or influenced, personality changes, inability to function. Seek help from someone trained in entity removal or spiritual cleansing. Not another ceremony, healing from qualified practitioners. But here's my honest recommendation. Unless you're genuinely called and prepared to do it right, don't do it. The spiritual path is not a sprint. Consciousness expansion achieved too quickly is unsustainable. Real transformation happens slowly through consistent practice, authentic shadow work, and genuine service. You don't need a shortcut. You need commitment. You don't need cosmic insights downloaded in 4 hours. You need daily practice sustained over years. You don't need to meet entities in the jungle. You need to meet yourself in the mirror. And when you approach the spiritual path with patience, humility, and discipline, without demanding immediate enlightenment, you build something real. Something that can't be taken away. Something that doesn't require more ceremonies to maintain. Something that integrates into your actual life rather than existing as a separate spiritual experience. That's the path the ancient masters walked. That's the path that actually leads somewhere. Not the ayahuasca retreat, not the cosmic download, not the entity encounter. Just you, your practice, your discipline, your commitment, every single day. The medicine you're seeking isn't in a cup in the jungle. It's in the mirror, in the meditation cushion, in the hard work you've been avoiding. Ayahuasca promised you a shortcut. I'm offering you the real path. It's longer, harder, less Instagrammable. But it's real, it's sustainable, and it won't leave you with attachments you'll spend years trying to remove. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. If this challenged you, good. If this made you uncomfortable, better. If this made you angry, best. That means something in you recognized truth you didn't want to hear. Share this with someone considering ayahuasca, not to shame them, but to give them information that nobody else will. And if you've experienced negative consequences from plant medicine and thought you were alone, you're not. Resources in the description. Communities exist. Help is available. Next video. The entities people encounter on DMT. What they really are and why they're not what you think. See you there. Grounded, protected, and sovereign. Welcome to the Hidden Voyage. Welcome home, SoulWhisper and SoulCreator. The Hidden Voyage.